Is this real life? I feel crazy. The world is spinning around me. What's happening? You have 4 eyes. I have 2 fingers. Wherever you want to go. Where are we going?
So check this out, yo. Justin, you ever seen the movie 48 Hours? Right now, he's having 48 hours with Diddy, him and his boy. They're having the times of their lives, where we hanging out and what we doing. We can't really disclose, but it's definitely a 15-year-old's dream. I have been given custody.
They say when Justin Bieber was still a child, there was a secret connection no one talked about, a relationship hidden behind fame, behind power, behind closed doors, late-night parties, private meetings, no cameras, no witnesses. Online narratives now claim that Sean Diddy Combs used his influence again and again, while Justin Bieber was still too young to understand the game. And now people believe newly surfaced Epstein-related documents explain why these disturbing stories never disappeared. But is this the truth, or the most dangerous narrative the internet has ever created? Some stories don't announce themselves. They arrive quietly, stitched together years later from moments that once felt ordinary. People now talk about an alleged secret connection that stayed hidden from the public, not because it was invisible, but because it was never clearly defined. In real time, it looked like proximity, like access, like opportunity. In hindsight, it feels like something else entirely, a closeness that existed without explanation, without boundaries the audience could see, and without questions anyone seemed willing to ask. This is how secret relationships are said to form in places where power meets vulnerability. One side holds experience, influence, and the ability to open doors. The other holds youth, ambition, and the need to belong. Nothing has to be said out loud for the imbalance to exist. It's built into the room, into the schedule, into who decides what happens next. When access replaces protection, the rules quietly change. Being around the powerful begins to matter more than being shielded from them. Invitations become validation. Proximity becomes currency. And the line between guidance and control starts to blur. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but slowly enough that it feels normal while it's happening. There's an uncomfortable silence that settles in whenever age and authority share the same space. Not because everyone agrees, but because disagreement costs something. Careers, relationships, momentum. In industries fueled by visibility, silence often feels safer than speaking up. And so the silence grows, unquestioned, unrecorded, and eventually misunderstood. Fame can work like camouflage. It turns private influence into something that looks harmless from the outside. A meeting becomes a mentorship. A late night becomes networking. A repeated presence becomes loyalty. When everything is wrapped in success, it's easy to believe nothing needs scrutiny. After all, if something were wrong, wouldn't someone have said something? But this is where the story becomes complicated. Why didn't anyone question these relationships at the time? Because they didn't look like secrets then. They looked like privilege, like opportunity, like a young talent being welcomed into rooms most people never see. In real time, admiration drowned out concern. By the time doubt surfaced, the moment had already passed. Years later, secrecy reshapes public memory. Old photos feel heavier. Old interviews feel rehearsed. Casual moments are replayed with new meaning. The absence of explanation becomes its own explanation. And memory, especially collective memory, has a way of filling in blanks with whatever feels most believable. Rumors grow strongest where clarity is missing, not because they're proven, but because they answer questions no one else will. When timelines aren't explained and boundaries were never made visible, speculation steps in to organize the confusion. It creates a story where none was officially told, and once that happens, the narrative stops asking what happened. It starts asking why no one stopped it. Before going any deeper into this video, make sure to like this video, subscribe our channel. Allegations of secret meetings don't describe dramatic ambushes or hidden tunnels. They describe something quieter. Moments that never made it onto itineraries. Gatherings arranged through assistants. Invitations delivered verbally. Events that existed but only for those who were meant to remember them, and sometimes for those who were meant to forget. In elite circles, this isn't unusual. Closed-door parties are part of the culture. They're framed as networking, celebrations, or private celebrations among trusted people. The exclusivity is the point. It separates insiders from spectators. And once you're inside, the rules feel different. Closed doors change behavior. Phones disappear first, sometimes politely, sometimes forcefully. Cameras are discouraged, then banned. The absence of recording is explained as privacy, but it also removes accountability. Without images, stories can't be proven or disproven. Without witnesses, responsibility dissolves. People often ask why no evidence ever surfaces from these spaces. The answer is simple and unsettling. Evidence isn't allowed to exist. Entry is controlled carefully. Guest lists are short. Access is granted by power, not proximity. And the same force that controls entry often controls silence. You're there because someone wanted you there, and you stay quiet because someone can make sure you're never invited again. Inside these rooms, NDAs are more than paperwork. They're reminders. Loyalty isn't optional. It's expected. Fear doesn't have to be spoken. It's implied through careers, contracts, and connections. Breaking silence doesn't just risk embarrassment, it risks erasure. This is why young stars are often described as present, but absent at the same time. They're physically in the room, but never in control of it. Decisions are made around them. Expectations are set for them. And the cost of speaking up feels higher than the cost of staying quiet. Years later, when those same meetings are examined online, they take on a different shape. What once looked like privilege now looks like access. What felt exclusive now feels isolating. And what was once dismissed as normal industry behavior becomes central to growing theories. Internet narratives thrive on what can't be verified. Each closed door becomes symbolic. Each unrecorded night becomes suspicious. And when no one can fully explain what happened, speculation becomes more convincing than facts. This is where the Epstein comparison enters and amplifies everything. Epstein's crimes didn't just expose a man, they exposed a system that used secrecy as protection. Since then, his name has become shorthand for hidden abuse of power. Once that comparison is made, every private gathering feels connected, even when it isn't. The logic becomes emotional instead of evidential. If secrecy enabled one predator, people assume it must enable others. If silence protected one network, then silence anywhere feels dangerous. And so these meetings, never documented, never denied, never explained, become the center of suspicion. Not because anyone can prove what happened behind those doors, but because no one can prove what didn't. In that uncertainty, belief takes over. And belief doesn't need permission to spread. Night changes how stories are told. It always has. When the sun goes down, structure disappears. Schedules end. Supervision fades. And whatever remains is governed by power, not rules. That's why night parties are so often linked to the darkest allegations. Not because darkness guarantees wrongdoing, but because it removes the systems that usually stop it. Late hours create distance from accountability. Private locations create separation from the outside world, and unchecked power fills the silence in between. When authority controls the environment, behavior shifts. What feels unacceptable in daylight can feel negotiable after midnight. People who believe these narratives talk about places far from public venues, mansions instead of studios, private rooms instead of open spaces, doors that close quietly without announcement, locations chosen not for celebration, but for isolation. And from those settings come the most disturbing stories from behind closed doors. Not official statements, not police reports, stories. Stories that never reach daylight because daylight demands details. Dates, names, witnesses. Night doesn't. Night allows memory to blur and fear to linger without explanation. Most of these accounts are anonymous. No timelines, no addresses, no proof that can be tested, just fragments, feelings, moments remembered long after the fact. And yet the lack of detail doesn't weaken them. It strengthens their mystery because anonymity feels safer and fear feels familiar. There's a psychological weight to secrecy after dark. When something feels wrong but can't be defined, The mind replays it, over and over, each time adding meaning, each time sharpening discomfort. What began as confusion becomes certainty, not because new facts appeared, but because the memory never found resolution. And when evidence is missing, imagination steps in, not maliciously, naturally. The human brain is uncomfortable with gaps. It fills them with patterns, with assumptions, with narratives that make sense of chaos. In these stories, silence becomes intention, absence becomes guilt, and unanswered questions become conclusions. Fear accelerates this process. It turns possibility into probability. It transforms something felt off into something must have happened. And once fear takes hold, logic struggles to catch up. That's how stories evolve. That's how whispers become warnings. That's how rumors begin to feel like truth. These narratives refuse to disappear because they're not built on facts alone. They're built on emotion, on distrust of power, on a history that has taught people, again and again, that secrecy is rarely harmless. Every time another scandal breaks somewhere else, these stories resurface. Every time a powerful figure is exposed, the past is re-examined. Night parties are replayed in the public imagination, even if nothing concrete ever emerges. And so the stories stay, not proven, not erased, just waiting, waiting for confirmation or waiting to be replaced by the next darkness people are ready to believe.